All right, so let's talk about week 3. As I look at the stats, I just got home. I kind of watched some of the ticker earlier today, um, but some of the other stuff that's been happening, I haven't been really paying attention to too much. I'm just going to go flip through the stats. The main guy that I've already kind of looked at as I glossed over them really quick is Elijah Moore, um, and depending on your league, um, he may or may not be rostered. He's going to be a guy that's probably going to be easier to get. He may even be dropped this week. Um, and this is going to be my number one waiver ad is Elijah Moore because of the usage that he got. So, if I pull up the box score, he has I think like 7 and 9, and then he had another 9 targets today for the Browns. And this is like wide receiver 2 usage. Again, I got to go look at the routes now and see how the routes are functioning, and we'll talk about this on Tuesdays, dealing with Bob. But for today, he's got those 9 targets. That's all I care about. I don't necessarily care about the depth of target or any of that stuff. He also had 3 carries, and this is like the third straight game he's been involved with carries. So there's about 10 opportunities a game as a wide receiver. That's almost wide receiver 1 usage. Again, it depends on how he's being utilized. I don't think the Cleveland offense or passing game is ever going to be that good, but from a standpoint of where he would work into my roster as a flex or as a low end wide receiver 2, or just even a replacement guy, this is a guy that I can go get. I could probably get for rather relatively cheap. I could probably even trade for him. And with this usage, there is going to be a spike week. I mean, like 10 touches a game as a wide receiver. 1 week he's going to break away for a touchdown. And again, we'll talk about this more in a second with other guys, but like this is the guy that I take away from this game and go, hey, I got to go look it up. The Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, and Kareem Hunt, I don't take very much away from. The Titans have the best run defense in all football. They're really bad against the pass. From what I saw earlier today, the Browns just came out throwing. They didn't even really try and run the football, and that's how they jumped out to their lead. Jerome Ford's usage looks adequate. This is what we kind of thought was going to come out of it from him. It's an apples to oranges week because they're not going to see like the Tennessee run game or run defense every week. So I'm not too concerned with how he's going to be used going forward. And even in a game that they won 27-3, Pierre Strong didn't, got in late. Kareem Hunt really wasn't a thing. So like I'm okay with my Jerome Ford ownership, especially because I wasn't expecting him to be Nick Chubb. I'm expecting him to be like an RB2 or high end RB3, something along those lines. And Amari Cooper, another good week. Again, this is the Tennessee pass defense. Take that with what you will, and then Tajay Spears continues to eat into Derrick Henry. I don't know how much upsides he's going to have unless something goes on with Henry, either an injury or a trade. And then, all pieces of the Tennessee passing game are bad. Nothing that we didn't already kind of know. So moving on from this game, the Falcons-Lions. The Falcons are going to play a limited style of football, and then we're going to talk about pace of play a lot. That's the slower a team plays, the less plays that they're going to be able to have in a game. And if they're trying to just kind of grind teams into dust, they're not good for fantasy. I think I was talking about Jaden Reed versus Tank Dell, and one has a higher pace of play, one has a lower pace of play, and one's probably more sustainable because they're just going to get more opportunities in game. Again, opportunity is king in fantasy football. Falcons are going to be lower opportunities for everyone. That doesn't matter if it's Bijan or Kyle Pitts. They're just going to be lower opportunities. And in a game where they're kind of in a negative game script like this, where you have to have Desmond Ridder try and throw the football 38 times, unless they're trying to get the ball designed to Bijan Robinson, and this is the problem, one of the problems I talked about Bijan Robinson in the offseason, they have to basically use him like Elijah Moore in this game and get him those 9 targets, and not be as worried about his carries if they're going to win the game. And they didn't do that. Like, that's not what I see here. I might pop in and try and see how he was used. He had 6 targets. I don't know if those are out of the backfield or out of the slot. I did read someplace or hear someplace that he did lead all wide receivers with slot snaps. So again, this is what I'm looking for when I go look this up with Bijan, is how he was utilized. And then, everybody else is essentially what we thought they were going to be. This is not going to be a particular good passing game that we want pieces of. Detroit, I did see the ticker the first half of this game before I had to go do stuff today. Jahmyr Gibbs was not good in the first half, and then all of his carries came in the second half. I was expecting him to be utilized in the passing game, really spread it out. That didn't happen. Sam Laporta, 11 targets. If he's the number 2 in Detroit, and he's a legit number 2 in Detroit, now we're getting into the conversation of not just low end tight end one, higher end tight end one, 8 for 84 and a touchdown on 11 targets. That's something I'm interested in. 1 target less than the Sun God. That's really interesting. And then Reynolds wasn't a thing this week. And then I don't even see the other wide receiver. I forget the guy's name. It doesn't matter. He didn't do anything. So I don't know. I'm not even going to go look him up. But yeah, that's Laporte is a guy I'm looking at. But these are guys that probably are already rostered in a lot of leagues. So I'm not going to be able to trade for them without cutting off an arm and a leg. So they're less interesting to me, and they're not telling me anything I didn't already know. So Saints Packers. This was interesting. I saw the first half, or the ticker of the first half, 17-0. I thought that the wheels had fallen off on Jordan Love, and when I was prepping for this a little bit, I was thinking of the TV show 2.5 Men, where the character Candy was talking about. Well, I'm not going to talk about what she was talking about, but she made the comment about a really intelligent kangaroo driving a car. They may hit a curb or two, but they'll get you there. That's kind of what maybe Jordan Love's going to be this year. And when we talk about Justin Herbert threw for 400 yards and did 29 points. Jordan Love did 250, 1 pick, one touchdown. I think he had 2-point conversion. And he also had 9 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown. All we care about from a fantasy perspective is that he's getting there. I don't always need to know how the sausage is made. I just need to know that the stat line for my fantasy team has 26 points for Jordan Love and against 29 points for Justin Herbert, who may have had a much better football game. I don't care about the football game. I care about how the player got me there, and Jordan Love is now showing that he could get you there a little bit on the ground when he needs to, which may offset those days. So if we're looking at apples to apples, Jordan Love versus Jalen Hurts, and I know that's not what I'm saying, so don't worry about it. But Jalen Hurts can have those days where he just does it all in the air, or he can have those days where he does it all on the ground, or he can have those days where he does neither, but he just scores touchdowns somewhere or another. And that's kind of what we like. So again, Jordan Love's another guy that's going to probably be relatively cheap to get a hold of, as opposed to some of the other guys that we're going to talk about later on today. For the Saints, Derek Carr got hurt. I don't know that much about that. I'm not sure that if Jameis Winston is the backup, that actually hurts anybody on the Saints. Jameis Winston is, a gunslinger. So he's just, we don't care how the sausage is made. Kendre Miller may not be a thing. He wasn't overly efficient. Don't know how he's going to fit in when Kamara comes back next week. Tony Jones did Tony Jones things. He's not particularly good. Rashid Shaheed, no catches on 2 targets, but he did return a punt. So he still has value if you're into that type of thing. Olave is good at football, something we knew. Michael Thomas, 9 targets, caught 6 of them. All the stuff that we already thought. I don't think Michael Thomas is going to be back, but replacement wide receiver 3 flex, that's fine. Luke Musgrave, you can see the usage. I'm interested to see a snap share, but 8 targets, 6 catches, 49 yards. The spike week is coming, and then I kind of do have to put in some effort and see who this Donovan Wicks is, because I have no idea. 4 for 45 on 6 targets. I want to look at those incremental step ups. So if a guy does that, I want to see what his snap share was, and how he's being utilized the next week. If he just falls off, then I don't care. But if I see something, an uptick in snaps or an uptick in targets, I can put that guy on my bench before anybody's even talking about him. And then Jaden Reed's there again, 3 for 63 on 7 targets. I like the 7 targets. Again, low pace of play for Green Bay. And Romeo Dobbs, again, he's another guy that's like probably pretty locked in there. Don't care how he gets there. 5 for 73 on 12 targets, 1 touchdown. That's wide receiver 2 land. Pretty simply, like good solid wide receiver 3. Low end wide receiver 2. Hey, so who knows what he's doing? I can check really quick and see if he's even available in my league. He probably is available in some leagues. About half rostered in sleeper, it says. So, like that's a guy, he's going to be relatively cheap especially when everybody else is chasing some of the other, better looking, more hyped up stuff that hopefully we're already stashing, do what I say, not what I do type of thing. Broncos Dolphins. So I think it was the guys over at Bootleg said that the Dolphins or the Broncos defense may be the worst defense in football. And that's what it looks like when they get a 70 hung on them. And I already looked at the stats a little bit earlier, but like Chris Brooks is like the wide receiver 5 for Miami, or excuse me, the running back 5 from Miami. He did 9 for 66 and a 52 yarder. So whatever is going on in Denver, it's not good. And Russell Wilson, I mean, sometimes we don't care how the sausage is made, that's a 300-yard day, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I don't know what the point is of really holding on to any of the Denver running game. Like they're not showing that they're going to be particularly good. Cortland Sutton had a good game on 11 targets. Jerry Jeudy had a good game. Again, Marvin Mims is a guy that I'm going to check the snaps, the snap share of, but 5 for 53 on 73 yards. Like that's a guy that may or may not be talked about this week. Probably should, but he's going to be not rostered. And the guys that like they cost me very little to go out and see how they do ahead of time. Like those are the guys that I'm a little bit more interested in today. And then he also had a special teams touchdown. It says so yeah, like he's 24% rostered. So I can definitely see that he'll be up on the list, and he's going to be a lot cheaper than Achane that we're going to talk about. So if Denver has the worst defense and Miami has a good offense, these are things that we want pieces of. Obviously, again, talking about the Chargers-Vikings game later on, but it doesn't mean this is sustainable. And Raheem Mostert did 13 for 82 and 3 touchdowns. He also had, because I got a lot hung on me today in my league by the guy that basically just only had Dolphins and Chargers playing. He did 7 for 60 and another touchdown on through the air, right? And Robbie Anderson had 1 for 68 and a touchdown in the game, and Tyreek did a 9 for 157 and a touchdown on 11 targets. None of that stuff is super interesting. So the De'Von Achane stuff where he does like 4 for 30 and 2 touchdowns on 4 targets, and then he comes back and does 100 or 200 yards on 18 carries and two touchdowns on a 67-yarder. Like, why? If I've stashed Achane, like I don't even know if I can use him next week, because he's not going to have the choice matchup against the Broncos defense. Like, so if I didn't drop him, and I did, and I was just stashing him, I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't have played him this week. I wouldn't have got the 49 points. If you would have, like, that good for you. Like, congratulations. The problem is if I did stash him, he's going to at best be in this timeshare with Raheem Mostert, and Jeff Wilson's coming back, and Solomon Ahmed was inactive today because of injury. And you really have to parse how you get to Achane at least hitting 40% in high efficiency situations where the design passing plays and red zone touches, because days like this are not going to happen again. And it just becomes a matter of like how I deploy him in my offense. Can I run him as a running back too? Maybe. Is he good as a flex? Probably. But how close is he ever going to have a day like this, especially when the other guys come back? Now, the interesting thing is I could definitely see that like they don't activate Jeff Wilson after week 4. I could definitely see that occurring. I could see Solomon Ahmed goes on IR, And in that case, if Achane is working as the running back too, in a good timeshare, I bet he still has a lot of week to week value. But if he's that 30% snap share guy and he's not having design plays for him, he's going to end up being unusable even with the spike week. So if everybody's going to go out there and talk about dropping fab on a guy like this, like, like he's a guy that I could definitely see eventually winds up on the waiver wire again this year. And the only reason why someone might keep him on their roster is if they go out and they drop like a whole mountain of fab or a waiver claim, and they have that the thing that I talked about the other day where they value what they've already sunk into the guy and they're just not going to give him up. So like something like that is going to happen. So like he's on my waivers. I'm not going to be able to get him. I don't know like what he doesn't interest me as a backup running back anymore. That's the whole reason why I dropped him. Like I think he's really good at football, but I just can't see how he gets there other than he had this really choice matchup where they could just do whatever they wanted against the Denver Broncos. So that's about all I have to say about Achane. Let's see. Chargers, Vikings. Saw something at the end. I saw the highlight of the pick that TJ Hawkinson may have dropped the ball. I was really big on Keenan Allen before the season started. I was really big on Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert goes for 403 touchdowns, and Jordan Love still almost catches him. Just because Justin Herbert had 2 carries for 11 yards. Again, like how much the rushing upside matters because Justin Herbert has to have this type of day to outdo Jordan Love, who basically did all of his damage in the fourth quarter. So, again, we still like pieces of good offenses. We like pieces of good offenses going up against bad defenses. That's what happened today. Chargers don't even look like they can run the football if they wanted to. Keenan Allen, really good at football. We already knew that. Hopefully you spent up and got him. I know Mike Williams hurt his knee. Again, I think I talked about this the other day with Joshua Palmer. Like, go out and get pieces of games like this and throw them in your lineup. This is going to be down the line when we start realizing that some of our capital isn't going to pay off. In games like this, because if he gets a ball that should have been an interception, it gets tipped to him, he goes into the end zone like Bob's your uncle. There you go. And then Gerald Hebert going 6 for 30 is essentially going to be usable against most tight ends this week. So there you go. And then from the Minnesota standpoint, I mean, Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. He actually scored. TJ Hawkinson, goes in the season basically tight end 4. He's still doing that stuff. Jordan Addison did all his damage in the second half. I know because I had him in one of my leagues and he did basically nothing. Nothing too surprising. The big stuff out of this is Cam Akers was a healthy scratch, not surprising. And Alexander Madison had a really good game, at least statistically. He did another 5 for 32 in the air on 7 targets. Like, he's a wide receiver too. Like we are a running back too. He's going to have those weeks. Wide receiver or running back twos are always going to have down weeks. I don't think he's a thing. Ty Chandler was relatively good again on limited work. A bad defense. Like they're going to have their weeks. And Kirk Cousins still doing Kirk Cousins things. I think he was the quarterback 1 coming into the week, and he's still up there. So that's what we take away. Patriots Jets didn't even cover the spread. I think they had 32 points and they put up 25 total. Again, this is another game I want to watch. So I don't know what's going on with Zeke and 16 carries for 80 yards. I have Ramondre in some leagues. I wanted to see more receiving work that didn't materialize. So I don't know exactly what's going on. And then usage in the passing game, nothing particularly interesting. Hunter Henry's probably has a lower floor. I mean, that's not too, surprising. And then from the Jet standpoint, Zach Wilson doesn't look like he lost the game. No picks. Game manager there. He keeps him within 5. Not that interesting. This is a coaching issue when Breece Hall has 12 carries and another 2 targets and just isn't part of the game plan or doesn't do much. That's bad. I know Garrett Wilson had most of his work in the second half on 9 targets. You still like the 9 targets. And again, when we talk about the Jets, like when I talked about the Aaron Rodgers injury early in the season, and I was like, well, how much worse can it get than how much worse can it get from a defensive standpoint? And obviously, like when I went and looked it up, like the Jets have a really brutal schedule. They still say they're sticking with Zach Wilson, and when he has a game manager type game against a really good defense, it's not surprising. The coaches need to figure out a way, and I'm not trying to defend Zach Wilson, but the coaches need to find a way to get more production out of their guys, knowing that they're limited. And then when you look at a Browns offense against the Titans that are really good on the run, really bad against the pass, and then you have Elijah Moore getting those 10 opportunities, and some of them are on the ground, like manufacture the ways that you get the balls into your guys' hands, and then you just don't see it with the Jets. Like it doesn't look like they're really trying to win. And I did read that there was a blow up on the sideline, I think, with Michael Carter and the running backs coach. Like it just may not be a good season for the Jets. And I did tell my co-manager who I own Garrett Wilson with, it's like it's just not going to happen. Like I don't magically see a corner being turned. But the issue is, like, when I go back and I look at this game, it becomes like, well, how bad is Zach Wilson? And looking at Breece Hall's usage and how inefficient it is, it's telling me that it's not Zach Wilson. And that was part of the problem when I talked about like the Jets in the offseason with Garrett Wilson being overvalued, is the fact that the Jets just weren't going to need Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers to really light up the sky to win games. They were going to be in games like this, and they just wanted Aaron Rodgers to be able to go out there and get them that extra touchdown so they would win 17-15. So let's see. Moving on, Jets Commanders. So this is interesting. I did look at this because Brian Robinson had 10 for 70, not involved in the passing game. Antonio Gibson had another fumble. Sam Howell was not particularly good with 4 picks. So like Sam Howell isn't going to get you there. Only 1 carry. So this is ugly. And then what's his face? Dalton Kincaid literally started the game. I think like the first 2 completions went to him, and then he just disappeared. And then Gabe Davis does 1 for 35 and a touchdown. That's what you kind of expect from Gabe Davis. Stephon Diggs, it's a Stephon Diggs game. Like having these offenses where they have multiple ways to go can get a little dicey. He does 8 for 111 on 12 targets. Josh Allen does Josh Allen things. The big issue that I saw in the game with James Cook is he did nothing, and then all of his work, I think, came in the second half. And if he's not getting the touchdowns, I'm trying to look him up. He's going to stay in that RB2 range, because like the main 2 things that we want to see out of a running back are red zone usage and design passing plays. And if he's not getting that, it doesn't matter how good he is. Going back to De'Von Achane, doesn't matter how good he is. He's just not an efficient fantasy player. We want points per touch, not yards per touch. Yards per touch doesn't mean the same thing as points per touch. That's why in PPR leagues, and hopefully most of you are in some form of PPR and not just standard, like that's why a reception is usually always going to be more efficient or put up more points than a carry, just because you get the 0.5 or the 1 in full PPR. Like that's why receiving backs, Alvin Kamara, scores touchdowns and he catches football. Like that's a great running back. A guy who's just really good at running the football, 15 for 98, and then gives you another 2.4 in half PPR. Like he's a 10-point day. That's a 40-degree day. You just had a 40-degree day with James Cook. And unless we can figure out he can get into the end zone, now he's going to have spike weeks. He's going to score touchdowns. But even with a touchdown in this game, he's only up to about 18 points. Like that's going to give you the ability, 4 or 5 times a year or a season to kind of boost them up into that low end RB1 range. But if he can't do that weekly, he starts to become an anchor in your lineup, or not a good anchor, a bad anchor. He's going to weigh it down. And then, we don't get a lot of receiving work out of the Redskins because Sam Howell only did 170 yards. So that's kind of what I get out of that. If I had James Cook, I'm selling. I'm trying to use that usage to get something out of it, like sell high, or excuse me, not sell high. I want to buy high. I want to put that into a trade with a guy, and they go, ooh, I see that usage. I can take that usage. I can put it in my lineup, and so if I package that James Cook together with something else, like they go, ooh, look at that usage, and I can already sell that the usage is bad. Like it's just not good from a fantasy standpoint. So that's when I go look at that. Like it looks really good until it's like, where are my touchdowns? Like I have to have the touchdowns for Spike's week, which is different than how the analytics were with fantasy football. Like 10 years ago, it was don't chase touchdowns. Well, now it has to be chasing touchdowns, and it also has to be chasing receiving work. That's just how it goes. Because the value of just pure yards just isn't enough to make a difference. Like 40-degree days. Let's see. Texans, Jaguars. So again, Trevor Lawrence may be good, but he's not great. And I kind of watch this. Like ETN does appear that he is getting a majority of the work. I did see Tanks Bigsby vulture to touchdown. That's what we were kind of worried about. But Etney, 4 for 50, 5 targets, and another 19 carries for 88 yards. Again, if they're not getting touchdown work, if they're not being used in the red zone, like they just don't have the value. So a guy like Travis Etienne is a guy that I'm like selling, and I want someone to look at the usage and go like, oh, the touchdowns are coming. No, they're not. And then the other guy that I'm worried about is where's he at? Calvin Ridley did have 7 targets, 3 for 40, not very efficient. Like something's going on there. Christian Kirk gets the receiving touchdown. Evan Ingram is again probably a low end tight end one that you just sit in your lineup and you don't worry about at this point. But those are probably all manufactured. So when I go look at that, that's something I'm gonna look at. And then Houston, they're not going to be running the football. That's not what we're really concerned with. We're concerned with, can CJ Stroud have a high enough passing volume to carry certain guys? So Nico Collins goes from being like the number 1 rated wide receiver to getting 3 targets for 34 yards on 2 catches. But Tank Adell's still there. And this is a guy I talked about this week with Tank Adell. Like why I'm stashing a Tank Adell is 7 targets again. And he's very efficient with it, 5 for 145. So like if the passing volume stays high, and 30 is not particularly good, but it's in a bad game script for most of this because they were just they were up 17-0 at halftime, and they probably throttled it down the second half. Like again, stuff I got to go look up. But if Tank Adell's doing the damage on what he's getting, it's going to be sustainable. Especially if I'm just planning to use him as a flex or as a replacement player. So, like, hopefully you already stashed him. He's going to be on everybody's list this week. Let's see. Colts Ravens, my boy Gardner Minshew doing Gardner Minshew things with the win. Zach Moss is going to remain relevant probably as long as Anthony Richardson's out. I bet like his usage goes down because they're going to go back to centering the offense around Anthony Richardson. Michael Pittman, and I called this in the preseason. Michael Pittman was being drafted way too low. He does 9 for 77, 11 targets. Again, going to be limited if he doesn't get touchdowns. How he gets the touchdowns? He had his touchdown he had week 1, I think, was a screenplay. So unless he's like a red zone target, it's going to hurt him. What's his face? The tight end I don't see. I know I've heard a lot of stuff about like Branson, but like again, like it's not materializing on paper. Moss is nice for the time being. At least one more week of a rental, I gotta imagine. The Colts did sign Trey Sermon. He got in. So who really knows what's going to go on with Jonathan Taylor at this point, because they may not need running backs. Baltimore, I was a little concerned with this. I'll just make a hot take here. I never thought Lamar Jackson was a good quarterback. Not to say that he can't play quarterback well. I just haven't seen him actually have to sit in a pocket and take a defense apart. and that's just not what his game is going to be. And there are other teams that will allow him to do 14 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. That's why we drafted him in fantasy football. But the 202 yards passing, and they lost. That's not a good quarterback. It might be great for fantasy. I mean, that's like a good day, like 30 points or something like that. But from a football perspective, that's a little concerning. The running back situation is still very murky. I think Gus Edwards may have been hurt this game. I got to go look that up. Zay Flowers, another 10 targets. Again, the efficiency between the two guys, Tank Dell and Zay Flowers, on display. Mark Andrews, I mean, this is frustrating at this point if you're a Mark Andrews owner. And that's about it, taking out of that game. Let's see. Panthers Seahawks. The Red Rifle made Adam Thielen a thing. 11 for 145 and a touchdown on 14 targets. DJ Shark comes out of nowhere, gets 11 targets downfield, 4 for 86. The problem maybe with the Panthers is that Bryce Young is just not going to push the ball down the field. He's too much of a manager, and he's not going to take the shots that he needs to take the shots with. And you still see Miles Sanders being the receiving back, 9 targets, 5 for 38, only had 9 carries, but he did get a touchdown. I mean, this is kind of what we wanted out of Miles Sanders coming into the season. He's probably going to be a solid RB2 all year, just on the volume, and if they're going to use him in the receiving game. I like the uptick for Terrence Marshall and Jonathan Mingo. There may be a possibility that those two develop down the line, but I don't know if they're stashable at this point. And Chuba Hubbard, I mean, one of the more important handcuffs in fantasy, still hanging around, being relevant. Seattle, Geno Smith. I think that the Seattle passing game is going to be like this. It's going to be very hard to predict who puts up what. JSN, Jackson Smith, the Jigba, 3 targets. I don't know if he's going to be a thing. There's that Jake Bobo again getting in there on 2 targets. He may be more valuable than Jackson Smith or Jigba. I can see in the future Jackson Smith or Jigba, JSN is going to take over Tyler Lockett's role in the offense. Tyler Lockett's 31. DK is going to be DK. Kenneth Walker, he's bell cow. There's not much to say about that. And then Charbonnet gets in there too, another valuable handcuff. It's nothing that we're taking out of that game that isn't really surprising us, I don't think. Because again, I'm not buying. They're not going to leave Andy Dalton in the game. Once Bryce Young is back, they're going to bring Bryce Young back. They might allow Bryce Young to miss a little bit of time and see if they can win. Or excuse me, they might let Bryce Young miss a little bit of time and heal up. So they're not forcing him back into the lineup. But the really bad offense that we saw with Bryce Young, I don't think is going to change. And if we get the Bryce Young offense, then the passing game of the Panthers is not useful. And then Miles Sanders is basically just a volume play. So that's the big issue. And Adam Thielen, if he's available in your league, what's it worth to throw a couple bucks at him? Because again, and I'm gonna pull this up again, I'm not gonna shake a stick at 14 targets. I'm not gonna shake a stick at 11 targets. I'm gonna stash that. Those are guys that'll, if they make it through my waivers, yeah, sure, I can throw them in the bottom of my bench to see how it goes. If I need a wide receiver this week, then there are worse Hail Marys to be made. But I like the targets for a lot of these guys in this offense. They're just not materializing into efficiency, and I can keep the roster churn going on with those guys at the bottom of my bench, depending on who I'm giving up, because there may be some upside in that down the line, especially when the bye weeks are coming, that I know that there's the potential for a 14-point game for Adam Thielen, because I've seen it before. Let's see. Bears, Chiefs. I don't want to talk too much about this game. Justin Fields. I have watched some people talk about Justin Fields this year. This is not purely a Justin Fields thing. I didn't think he was that good coming out of college. But I think part of it was he was very good at running the Ohio State system. And whatever's going on in Chicago, they're not allowing Justin Fields to do what he's good at and comfortable. That's bad coaching. Um, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it has to be production. And at this point, like there may not be enough in Chicago to really want to stay behind Justin Fields. So you're drafting him for the rushing upside, and they like who knows what's going to go on with this in the future. Like Roshan did have more than Khalil Herbert. I don't know if Khalil Herbert got hurt. I don't know if that was because of the blowout. Like this offense is just not going to be predictable, which means that it doesn't matter how good I think Roshan is or you think Khalil Herbert is. Like it's going to be really hard to get them in the opportunities they need to get the volume and the opportunity for points. DJ Moore sneaks in. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot there. Kansas City, there's a little bit more to look at. It's a blowout, so Pacheco did play. CEH got in there. I don't know what Blaine Gabbert's doing, throwing 2 interceptions in this game. That's really odd. The main things to look at are there's a consolidation, especially with Richie James being out. Kadarius Toney wasn't used in his normal, like, let's screw up fantasy football role. So there were 4 wide receivers used, MVS, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Rashid White. So I want to see the snap shares on this. So we have 7 targets for Rashid Rice, 3 targets for Justin Watson, 6 targets for Sky Moore, which is kind of what we thought was going to be Sky Moore's role as this yak contested catch guy playing mostly out of the slot who can play on the outside if they need to. They can kind of move him around. And then MVS, just the 2 targets with the 1 deep shot of 37 yards. Like if this is materializing, if this is working its way out, and then we can maybe get it down to like 3 and 2 and 1. So now from a stash standpoint, like Rice's stash, more if you drop them and you can get them back on, you're like the 7 and 6 targets on the Kansas City offense have value. And if guys start working their way out of the rotation a little bit more every week, then we get more clarity, and then we know what guys we can play from, or I should say, I know what guys I can play on a week-to-week standpoint. So is Rashid Rice stashable? Absolutely. Is he playable yet? There's a possibility with this uptake or uptick with some of these guys that you're gonna get your spike week next week. But there's also a possibility that they're gonna stay at this level. But I do like this, and these are the type of guys, like especially if I'm wide receiver needy and I can get them for essentially free, then I'll take my shot at them. All right. So is that about it? Oh, to show that there is no God in football. So Cowboys were like the number 1 Vegas leaders in to win the Super Bowl this week, and then they play Arizona Cardinals, who are supposed to be the team that's tanking for Caleb Williams, and Cardinals win. One of my co-managers said Dak threw a really bad interception late in the game. I don't know. I didn't watch it yet. Tony Pollard, 23 carries, if we're worried about him being a bell cow. But again, these are not the touches that we want. There's no touchdowns. It's a bad day. Michael Gallup is the receiver to own, and not CeeDee Lamb. 7 targets. They're all strewn about the offense. We do see that Jake Ferguson is, again, he's a low end tight end 1 with his usage. 7 targets, 5 for 48. So there are worse guys to be stashing at the bottom of my roster. And then Arizona, James Conner continues to be what we thought he was going to be, this really ugly RB2, and just getting you the points that you need. Now, the guy that I am super interested in about and looking at the snap share, only 2 targets, a 69-yarder, 2 receptions for 86 yards, Michael Wilson. Again, the guys that I can stash for free, I like. Michael Wilson, 2 for 86, 2 targets. His snap share, I think, was going up. And this is just a guy, like, it's just like, well, if he can get a connection with Josh Dobbs, and then I can get my targets going, like what does it cost for me to put him on the bottom of my bench? When am I going to be comfortable starting him? Well, again, the bye weeks are coming up, and a guy like this, like I can do it for free. Like that's the thing that I like, is being able to do it for free, because I want to save my claim and my fab for when I need to. And again, with Achane, if you're taking your shots early, and then you dump the Achane and you got to go back and get him, you have all your fab to just go, like, I want him on my roster. It doesn't matter. Like, go get you, if he's your guy, go get your guy. Have fun with fantasy, right? Don't have those weekends where it's like I hate fantasy, like I was doing all day. I hate fantasy. But that's what I like about that. And then the Zach Ertz bandwagon falls apart. Only two targets this game. But yeah, like that's what I'm looking at with these guys. And trying to see who slips through waivers. Because I don't want to be spending on like I don't think there's anybody to spend on. Probably the guy right now that I would be looking at spending on is Tank Dell. He's the guy I'd be looking to spend on. The Kansas City wide receivers, Rice, and if Moore's available, those are interesting guys. Michael Wilson is there. Let's see. I'm just thinking. Jordan Love, if he's still available, I like. He probably isn't available in a lot of leagues. I'm selling James Cook. I'm probably selling Travis Etienne. I'm going to be able to get the most I can out of him right now. I don't think anybody's buying out Alexander Madison. So, this is the thing with fantasy is you got to be able to weather the down weeks on guys that you are buying to know that they're going to have down weeks. Alexander Madison was not going to be a league winner. He was going to be a very ugly RB2, just like James Conner. And you have to weather those down weeks because he's also going to come back and give you good weeks. You just can't be pulling guys out of the lineup when you're buying them to be the guys that they are. Right? If that makes sense. I'm not buying De'Von Achane. To get on board De'Von Achane was before this week. Now I think he's going to cost way too much money. Romeo Dobbs, if he's available. Luke Musgrave. Let's see. And I don't think Laporta should be available at all. And Elijah Moore, if he's available. But a guy like Elijah Moore is a guy I think is very easy to trade for. So like that's kind of what I'm thinking at. So anyway, 41 minutes. I don't know how many people want to listen to me talk the whole time, but yeah, that's about all I got. Yeah, I'll see you guys later or something.